most people don't realize depression looks completely different for everybody. And for me, it actually manifested as anger.
Well, hey, everybody. I am so excited to welcome Traci Geraci to the What the 50 podcast today. Hey, Traci.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. Traci and I have never met in person. Let's put that out there. I watch her on Facebook. We're Facebook friends, but we've never interacted in person. This is the first time we've ever spoken, but I've been trying to hit her up for a few months. Like, hey, I need you on my podcast. And here's why, because Traci is a woman of a certain age. She's over 50 as well, but she is just this powerful, badass bitch on Facebook. And I mean, bitch in a good way, in quotation marks, meaning, you just have this gravitas behind you, this power, this energy that is disarming, but also it's confrontational, which we'll go into, but it's also like, wow, it's inviting and it's inspiring. So I really appreciate you on social media putting yourself out there as exactly who you are. I love that about you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how to be anybody else.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's refreshing. Have you always been like that? We're going to go into your childhood a little bit, but have you always been this person that like, hey, I am who I am, like, take it or leave it?
yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us who Traci was growing up. We've all had trauma, struggles, and all that, but take us from, in as much detail as you want from your childhood into who you are today as a grown woman with children. You have 4 kids, correct? 4 daughters?
I have 5 children, 4 daughters and a son.
That's me too. But is your son the oldest?
No, he is the youngest.
Oh, okay. My son's the oldest and then the 4 girls. Oh, how fun. That's exciting. Okay, so tell us about you.
Okay, so the first thing that people usually notice about me is my name because it rhymes. And they're all right. And they're always like, why did your parents do that to you? And so I don't tell too many people this, but I feel comfortable enough sharing this here. My given name at birth was actually Teresa O'Neill. So my mom, for whatever reason, named me Teresa. I think it had to do with the church. And then she always called me Traci. So like the only time I got Teresa was when I was in trouble. So if I were walking down the street and someone said, hey, Teresa, I would never in a million years look, because that's just not who I am. So before I was 3, my parents were divorced. My dad walked out on us. And so that left my mom, my sister, and myself. And I am the oldest between my sister and I. She's 14 months younger than I. And my mom, because of the divorce and because my father had put us in financial dire straits, for lack of a better explanation, we moved in with my grandparents. So my grandfather actually became my father figure, if you will.
Okay.
And then he actually, this was, 1974, 75, somewhere in there. And at that time, women could not purchase a home on their own, like physically could not. People would not sell you a house if you were a woman by yourself. So my grandfather bought us a home and we lived in it. But because my mom had me and my sister, she didn't work. We were on welfare. We got food stamps, the actual physical food stamps that came in the mail. You took them out, licked them, stuck them in a book. And then when my sister and I were both in school, my mom was able to go back to work. She actually started working as a lunch lady at our school because we were within walking distance. And around age 7, say age 8, somewhere in there, my mom got remarried. And then she came to us and asked my sister and I what we thought about my stepfather adopting us. And of course, at that age, my first instinct was, I don't know, because I'm too young to understand what this fully means anyways. But after the fact, I was like, okay, I'm good with that because I have a dad, this is cool.
Right.
So after we were adopted, that's when my name changed. And that's when my name actually became Traci Geraci. So my stepdad's name is Geraci. And so it was just through a bunch of irony that my name is what it is. But in 1978, people didn't get divorced,
Right.
let alone you didn't have step parents, let alone you didn't have your name change. So when all of this happened, first, as a child, I was very reserved because of the fact that I didn't have a dad. So when you're going to school and everybody's saying, what does your dad do?
Yeah.
And so I kind of hung back and I didn't really engage. I didn't have a lot of friends when I was in school. And then when my name changed, I got picked on because, of course, it's fun to say Traci Geraci, and then it's fun, that rolls into all this other stuff. But along the line somewhere, I had two teachers who kind of noticed the fact that I was very good academically. Like I found safety in reading books and learning things. And I've always been an introvert, believe it or not. And so when I was in school, my teachers encouraged my academic development. So while the kids were teasing me, I was like, okay, everybody knows my name. Everybody's going to pick on me for my name. So I will give them something to know me for. Okay. I will be, and I will own Traci Geraci. Like I will own it. And at the same time, which I didn't realize until years later, was what I was actually owning was I was actually owning the fact that I had a dad. And I was owning the fact that my dad chose me to be his daughter. And that kind of then played into me being like, I don't care. You can pick on me all you want. You can pick on me because I get good grades. You can pick on me because I'm teacher's pet. You can pick on me for whatever. But this is who I am. And I am proud of this because I have a dad. And that means the world to someone who didn't.
Wow.
And I kind of just embraced that from there. Then I realized, and I found out that when you enter high school in the United States here, you have rankings in some of the schools where the highest person academically is called a valedictorian. So when I was a freshman in 9th grade, I went to my guidance counselor and I told my guidance counselor, I am graduating valedictorian in 4 years. And he kind of looked at me and kind of shrugged it off, kind of laughed, like in that older, wiser way, like, yeah, right. This child is sitting here saying this. And then I literally set out to do exactly that. So every test, every grade, everything was all about doing my best, being responsible to only myself because I was competing against myself and doing what was necessary so that I graduated valedictorian, which of course I did. What I didn't realize in there though, was that most of what I had been developing was based on external validation from my teachers. And I didn't realize it until I went to college. And then I became, the small fish in the big pond. And that's when the first episodes of my depression showed up. I didn't realize it at the time. I just, was like, I didn't feel like I was included in class anymore. Like people didn't know me. So I kind of shrunk a little bit, kind of stayed home. I cut class. So I went from most likely to succeed in high school to most likely not to be seen in class in college.
Wow.
Like voted on by the rest of my peers. And that was a bit devastating because I didn't fully understand what was going on, that kind of thing. And then I graduated, got married. I was a high school biology teacher for a few years. And then when my husband and I had gotten married, we had made the arrangement that whoever had the opportunity to make more money would continue to work and the other one would stay home. And so it just so happened that I was the one staying home and he continued to work. And again, going back to the whole, I was seeking all of that external validation and I didn't have that when I became a mom. Like there was nobody patting me on the back for the number of diapers I changed. There was nobody patting me on the back for the kids, not cutting each other's hair off. There was just never any recognition of anything other than me being completely exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
And that's when my depression really took hold. And it was actually after my fourth child, my daughter, my husband, who, when we got married, said to me, divorce is not an option because he's that committed to marriages. He said to me, if you don't get some help, I am divorcing you.
Wow.
So struggled for quite a few years through that. And it ended up being 17 years that I actually had what I would classify as severe depression.
Did you know at the time were you like, I know I'm depressed?
No, because the irony is, and this is what most people don't realize, depression looks completely different for everybody.
Yeah.
And for me, it actually manifested as anger, like complete rageaholic anger, like where I would have outbursts in the store with my children, anger, where people were looking at me like, who is this freaking freak, literally. And to have that uncontrollable outbursts, it wasn't about emotional intelligence. It was literally my hormones completely out of whack between having all of my kids and not having the external validation of the dopamine hits coming in. I was just fried, for lack of a better word,
That's so interesting. And I have heard it said several times that anger is really just a masking emotion. So when we're angry, oftentimes we're either sad or or whatever. So anger is like the mask. What's behind it? That's interesting. And it's really interesting that as a high school freshman, you set out with the goal of being the valedictorian. Like I'm sitting here going, my goal was just like make the cheering team and be super popular. And I wanted everyone to like me. How I wish I had that kind of drive. Like I could have done so much more, but you saying it was the external validation, the dopamine hit that kept you going and going and going. And then when you got to college, yes, I'd never thought about that, but college professors treat you very differently than your high school teachers. It's like, yeah, sit down, shut up. We're not here to make you feel good anymore. There's not interaction typically, especially at the big schools. So it's interesting that caused you to feel depressed because you weren't getting that. Now, did you try to seek out external validation in other ways because you weren't getting it anymore, or?
It wasn't until years later that I realized that that's what it was. It actually wasn't until skipping ahead a little bit, it wasn't until I set out to create my online business in 2017 that I actually realized what had gone wrong and why I was depressed. Like I did not realize, And part of that is because when my depression showed up, it was 2001. And yes, we had online things, but we didn't have what we have now. There wasn't a way to go and Google the stuff. There wasn't a way to watch Joe Dispenza. There wasn't a way to learn all of these things about neuroplasticity and all of this and all of your hormonal triggers, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin. There was no way to know all of that like there is now.
Right.
So, and then when you're in the midst of it, for me, I just retreated more because I was on the wrong medications. Because as much as we like to think that science is accurate, it's actually nothing but practicing. Everything is practice. Everything's a test. So what works for one person with antidepressants does not work for someone else. And there's no way to actually go in. There's no measurement tests for serotonin or dopamine, or you can't go in and take your blood and measure those. That doesn't work like that. So there's no way for you to figure it out other than trial and error. No. And, thank God my husband stayed married to me through all of that, because the amount of sex we were not having
Yeah.
because of my antidepressants. I'm surprised he didn't cheat on me with 40 women because I didn't know any better. And he just was supportive the best he possibly could, which was, okay, we're not having sex.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
That was my
So
question. Your marriage survived that depression.
yes, yes. And in the midst of that, in 2004, my husband started his manufacturing company. So the two of us, my husband had this idea, and I had always, since I was 12, I started my first business when I was 12. And so I've always been entrepreneurial. And so my husband was like, I want to start a manufacturing company because that was kind of in his background. And he's like, here's what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so he started that. So when my kids were little, you know, the diapers and the pull-ups, my husband was working his regular job for money. And then he was going into his manufacturing plant and making parts on the side because he's a die cutter. That's what he does. He makes gaskets and things for Ford and GM and airplanes, and the airplane shades you pull down, we make that.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, and I said, cool, let's do it. And then there was still life going on. In the midst of depression, there was still life going on. You know, there was still, the kids still needed to get to school. I still needed to go to parent teacher conferences. I still had to do this. I still had to do that. So while I had moments of true hibernation in my own world, I still showed up when everybody else needed me to. Like, I didn't know how else to not do that.
Were you just like autopilot, kind of zombieing it through?
A lot of times I was. A lot of times there were, and I'll be completely honest, there were conversations when my children were younger about when was the last time they had a bath.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't a priority. I'm like, we're not going anywhere. They're playing. They have a different change of clothes. They're in clean diapers, you know, and unfortunately that's part of the loneliness of the depression, you know, because not only do you feel like crap about yourself, but you feel like you can't ask for help either.
Right.
You know, and it wasn't anything that I had ever experienced for me to even realize that I should be asking for help, because I was always one of those people, well, I'll do it myself.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's how I was raised. When my dad walked out on us and my grandfather was around, because he was a man, he taught us, you do what needs to be done. If something needs to be done, you do it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. There wasn't asking for help. There was figure it out and do it.
Right.
So,
and
that's just,
well, the insidious thing is the more you isolate, the more you want to isolate. And so it just perpetuates, right? So, and yeah, that'll pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. Just get it done. Just do it. Don't whine. Don't be a victim. Perpetuates. It makes it worse, makes the depression worse. So you have 5 kids total. Were they all born very close together in years?
Yes. From oldest to youngest, there's 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So my first 2 are actually Irish twins, which means they were born less than a year apart.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 96, 97, 98. Then I had a miscarriage, and then 2001, 2003. And I had a miscarriage before I had kids too. So I total had 2 miscarriages in there.
So I have 5 kids as well, and we have similar aged kids. And I also have 4 daughters and 1 son, just like you, except my son's on he's first, and then the 4 girls. So I saw that picture online of your 4 daughters, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I have a very similar picture of my 4 daughters. Mm-hmm. I just loved that.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you find that your children naturally line up in their birth order for pictures?
Sometimes. Yeah. Do yours?
They do. They always do. Like when I have pictures of all the kids, like if they're in a row, they're always lined up in the order they were born, whether it's left to right or right to left. And I just find that so funny that they naturally default to that, you know?
I'm going to go back and look at pictures. Yeah, I'm thinking, maybe they do. Interesting. So your kids, were they aware that, hey, mom's struggling with depression? I know you guys didn't talk about it in those terms, but how did they respond? How'd they deal with it?
It was actually the thing we did not talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
It was never talked about in the house. It like the manifestations of it, my anger, how it played out, me not showing up for things for myself, or me canceling last minute for, play dates and things like that. It was never talked about. My husband had a very hard time with it because he was raised where you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you ask for help. So he did not understand how to help me. And he didn't understand why I couldn't just do that, why I couldn't just get up and take care of the kids.
Yeah.
He could not wrap his head around that. And so he avoided the conversations also, as much as I avoided them, because I felt like crap.
Right.
So it wasn't talked about. And the realization didn't come until my daughter number 3 was in college, that that was a disservice to my children, especially my daughters. Because she was packing up some stuff to go back to school the one day, and it was her sophomore year of college. And she said to me, she said, I think last year, my freshman year, she goes, I think I was depressed when I moved away from home. And it like stabbed me in the heart. I literally was like, all of these years, I thought that this depression was about me, and it actually wasn't. It was about the whole dynamic of me being in the life with them. And oh my gosh, what if something would have happened to her? How could I not talk about this? You know what I mean? And that's actually when I started talking about it.
Exactly. It's ironic because the things that we try to hide are actually the things that need to be confronted, talked about head on. And I've heard it said that our children pick up on our unhealed parts of us, and they try to work it out themselves and heal it themselves.
Right.
So what happened at that point? You just knew, you're like, I have to get help. Is that accurate?
No, it was at that point where the irony being is that my daughter number 3, who brought this up to me, she actually graduated college with a degree in neurobiology. So she was my neuro girl. And that actually conversation took me down to researching, well, why aren't my medications working? And what can I do to not be like this? And then the realizations of, yes, you do need medication, but you also need other things that go with medication. You need to talk about it. You need to share. You need to ask for help. You can't just take medication and that solves all. That's not how it works. And then it was, well, why didn't my doctor tell me this? Why didn't my doctor tell me that this is all a big test? Why didn't my doctor suggest that I go to talk therapy? And then I was like, okay, I can't go down that road because it does nobody any good to blame the doctor. So that's what happened. That's where we are. What do we go from here? And so I just started researching more. And eventually I just, for lack of a better explanation, decided that I was done with the depression. And I understood why it manifested to begin with in the fact of the dopamine. And then decided, okay, so what am I going to do? If I need this, if we all need these hits of dopamine to feel good about ourselves, what do I need to do to feel good about myself on a daily basis? Like, if I wake up and my first thought is, I don't want to get out of bed. And then the feeling of staying in bed comes, what do I do with that? How do I flip that around? And it was literally talking to myself moment by moment through every day, saying and talking through, this is just your brain. These are just your habits. This is what you've been doing. If you want it to be different, you have to do different. You have to think different. You have to act different. And it was just continuously doing that until new habits were formed. And I don't mean to say that I don't go through these bouts still, because I do. But my focus was on getting off the medication that obviously I knew was not actually helping me. Like it was masking the feelings and deadening the feelings.
So
So
you kind of just went for it head on. You just tackled it, pulled it out, if you will, excuse the metaphor, pulled this thing out by its roots and said, let's look at this.
right.
And then you knew you had to do very specific things to combat this. Reminds me of Mel Robbins. You familiar with Mel Robbins and her
Yes.
5 second rule?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that? Like where she was depressed for a long time. She couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And then she just said, I'm going to start counting down from 5 to 1. And by the time I get to 1, my ass is out of bed.
Right.
She had to do that every single morning. So it sounds very similar. She just forced herself out of it. And I think
Right.
oftentimes we get talking all this woo-woo stuff, which is fine, but you found a very practical, self-empowering solution to what you were going through. And I love that because I think that that actually could help a lot of people.
Right. And I would like to take credit for the fact that I did it for myself, like knowing that I would feel better, but I actually didn't. I did it because what's easiest for me, where my zone of genius lies, is in serving other people. It's in
Right.
helping other people. And so when my daughter said that to me, I was like, I can't continue like this because of them. Like, even if I feel like crap, what do I need to do to show up for them? They're adults. They're getting to the point where they're going to start having children. And what if this happens to them after they have babies, or if they decide to stay home? Like, in the world of women, I'm like, I have to figure this out. For me, yes, I get that, but that's the small part of it. The big part of it is because of my girls, because
Wow.
of my daughters. And then at the same time, my husband had a heart attack. And I don't mean to laugh because it's funny. I laugh because it's just ironic how the universe works.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there in the hospital waiting room when he was undergoing surgery, and I was by myself. There was nobody there with me. The kids were all in school. I couldn't call any of my family. We're not that kind of family. And I didn't actually I wanted to be by myself in all actuality. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, what if he dies? Like that, because that was a very real possibility. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so if he dies, what? And then I started running through the scenarios of, well, what does that look like then? Okay, so that looks like I don't have an income myself because I stopped working when the kids were born. We have his manufacturing company that I co-own with him, but at the same time, I can't run it without him.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what to do there. And then I was like, so how do I take care of a family of 6 if something happens to my husband? And I'm like, this is what I need to focus on. I need to have my own money. I need to have control over the what ifs. I need to be prepared for the what if. And then when I was sitting there, I was like, okay, well, I've done businesses before. I know how to do them. Things have changed since my kids were little. And I used to, take my totes of mulch, handmade mulch that I made, to craft shows. That was before the internet. I'm like,
Yeah.
things have totally changed. So this can't be that hard. This is going to be easy. And then you're like, okay, so what am I doing? And as I was sitting there, my mind was just wandering, and I cannot explain this for the life of me. The only way that I can put words to this is to say that it was placed on my heart that I am meant to elevate the worth and wealth of women. And it's not one or the other, because when I was in school, I had all the self-worth in the world, but it was externally validated. I just didn't realize it. And it's not about the money, because it was more important for me to stay home with my children than it was for me to go to work to make money. But if you don't have any money, than it is about the money.
Yep.
And for women, they are together. They're so intertwined in each other, our self-worth and our money and our value and what we think the world thinks of us, and it's all intertwined. And I was like, okay, so that's my mission, and my it's because of me and my daughters. I have to start with us. I have to start looking at us and repairing and healing us. You know what I mean? And so I kind of did that along with, okay, so what's this business going to look like? What's it going to be? What am I going to do? And I went down that whole rabbit hole of chasing the shiny object syndrome. Oh, that girl looks great. She's doing this. I should do that. That person's doing that. I should do that. Okay, let's do it. And then it didn't work.
It's easy to fall into that shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh my gosh, especially on social media. Get so
yeah. And it was like, well, why isn't this working? And why? I don't understand. I'm doing all of the things. I'm literally doing all of the things. Why is this not working? Why do I not have clients? I followed this program A through Z. I have the accountability partners. I have this, I have that. I've invested in myself. I have put myself out there. Why is it not working? And I finally had someone say to me, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And I'm like, well, what do you mean I'm doing it for the wrong reasons? And she was like, you're not using your personal experience and your personal expertise as the basis for what you're doing. You're looking at what everybody else is doing and saying, you can do that, instead of saying, what is the possibility that you should be doing? What is it that you were created to stand for? What were you created to stand up and speak about? What were you created to literally be able to be the only person that believes in you enough? And it doesn't matter if not another living single person ever agreed with you. What is that thing? And for a couple years, I kept bouncing still. Even after she said that, like I had the aha moment. I'm like, what does this look like? And then I would talk to people and I'm like, well, Cindy, what do you think I stand for? And then, you would tell me something. I'd be like, okay, that's good. And I would run with it. And I'd be like, but then I'd get to a place where I'd be like, that's just still doesn't feel right. Like I can talk about it. I can stand up behind it, but in the depths of my being, it doesn't feel right.
Right.
And you can't explain that to people. You can say that to someone, but unless they've been through that and they are literally sitting there, and I don't want to say it's rock bottom because it's not necessarily rock bottom, but it's a complete self-defeat where you're sitting there going, I just give up. I just give up. And it was at that moment where I decided instead of striving that I would surrender.
When I read that in your bio, I'm like, oh, chills. Because I get this. I get it. Like you took the courses, you paid the money, you're doing all the things, like you said, everyone told you to do, and it wasn't landing because it wasn't coming from deep within Traci's soul.
Yep.
What was Traci's purpose, mission here on this earth? And you're probably going to get to this, but your combination of the words that creates wealth, WELLTH, where I know you're going to get there, but that was like, oh my gosh, for me, that's brilliant that you've kind of owned that word, that you created that word, you own it. And that's what you're all about, right?
Yes. When I talk about growing this iteration of this brand right now, it is about the financial wealth, as in worth, and wealth as in your personal and your money, your mindset and your money, and And it all plays into what I've been through.
Right.
It plays into the fact that I grew up on welfare and that I was a childhood welfare statistic. It plays into the fact that I didn't have a dad that came home and brought us money and we went to the store and everything was hunky dory.
Yeah.
It plays into the fact that I had a grandfather who treated me like a grandson instead of a granddaughter. And, it plays into everything. It just does. And I always thought, ironically, that the big mission and the big way that this was going to play out for me with a business was going to be about my depression and about me, being academically smart and going from there and then going through the depression and helping women that way. Like, that's what I always thought in my brain, that how this was going to play out. And I got to that point, though, where I was like, seriously, I'm like, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm truly doing this for the self-worth of me if something were to happen to my husband, because there's still that possibility there.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I had gotten to a point where my husband is like, if it's not working, just come work for me full time. He's like, just work at the business full time. You'll have the money. I'm like, it's not about that. I can't explain to you as a man how much it's not about that.
Right.
Because men and women just don't, they're not the same. They're not wired the same. You can't comprehend. You didn't stay home with the kids. I can't explain this to you. You just don't understand. You grew up with two parents. I grew up with one. I just cannot physically, word-wise, explain to you what is in the depths of my soul.
Right.
And in November, it really was not too long ago. It was, a couple months ago. I was having a conversation with my one daughter, and she was talking about credit cards. And, she mentioned, well, should I consolidate my credit cards? I don't have as much money coming in as I would like right now because of this, because of that. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm trying to talk her through it, listen, while at the same time trying to empower her to make decisions on her own, not what I would choose for her to do, not what's easiest, but trying to support her the best way I could. And then I kind of forgot about the conversation. And then a few weeks later, another one of my daughters, she is currently in school. She's in college, and she was offered after graduation a full-time job already, making, 30 some dollars an hour. And she made a comment in our group chat that we have as a family. All 7 of us are in there. And she made a comment that she was going to be a rich bitch. And I was like, that is it. I'm like, that's it. It's about the richness of life. It's about the worth and the wealth of women. It's about the generational poverty that some of us have been through. And then as we grow and have children of our own, not repeating those same patterns, and teaching our children how we teach them all the things when they're little. And some children are taught, the financial side of things. But my children were taught that they had to work for their money. We didn't really talk about what do you do with the money once you earn it. Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about those kinds of things. So then it's like, well, my mom didn't talk about that stuff with me either. Part of it was because we didn't have extra, but that's neither here nor there. It's the fact of, where do I go now? It's, if my impact in the world is to be the worth and wealth of women, the closest women to me are my daughters. So it needs to be about them. It needs to be what they need. It needs to be the example that I am being to serve them first. It's finding the resources. It's knowing how to invest. What's the difference between a 401k, an IRA, and a Roth IRA? It's, well, yeah, you have money coming into your business, but that's not what the business is about. Yes, it is initially, but then you reach a certain point where it's not about just the money coming in. It's about the money that you're going to give back. It's about elevating someone else. It's about giving someone else a hand up, not a handout, a hand up, and helping other women around the world who don't have these same advantages that we do in the United States.
So your brand came out of this, self-awareness that you developed, but when your daughter said rich bitch, then it crystallized for you. You knew exactly what you needed to do. So your brand now is called?
It's called Rich Bitch Freedom.
Freedom. Okay. And it's about the wealth and worth, putting those two together. Wealth, WELLTH, correct?
Yes.
And what are you doing with this? Is this a coaching program? Is this it's bigger than that? How do you describe this?
It is a collaboration.
Okay.
It is women who, first of all, are smart. And I'll just say it. I appeal to the smart, sassy, service-based woman,
yeah,
who is building a business for the benefit of girls and women around the world.
yeah.
So it's a collaboration of sorts, with me talking about it more because it's very easy for me to talk about it because it's literally like in every fiber of my being. And it's about promoting other women. It's about, being, and I'm going to take this from Aaron Gallagher off of LinkedIn. It's about being the hype woman for other women. It's about cheering other women on, and so that we all win. It's not about the competition. It's about the collaboration, but it's deeper than that. It's about me seeing someone and saying, you need to be on Cindy's podcast. It's about, you need to be in so-and-so's group, and trusting that when we do that, it eventually comes back to us in the form of,
we're all like this, right?
Yep. Right. It comes back in the form of, well, so-and-so said that I needed to connect with you, and I've been following you for a little while, and I think that you would be able to help me with this. Can I work with you for you to help me with this? It's just putting yourself out there authentically, and at the same time knowing that there are other women who are beyond the competition, who are beyond the backstabbing, who are beyond being inauthentic, who are beyond chasing the shiny object syndrome. And they may or may not have a large following, because ironically, it seems like the larger the following some women have, the more actually inauthentic they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, you're back in middle school and high school again, where it's the popularity contest because they're saying the thing that everybody wants to hear, even if it's not changing anyone's life.
Well, they're saying in 2023 that social media is going to become super authentic, and people are no longer tolerating, the polished, perfect,
right,
life that people are putting out there. We just don't want it anymore. So
right.
What you're talking about is something that's super authentic and very organic, and I love it. And I would say that when I first on Facebook saw that you were kind of taking this direction, I'm like, yeah, that's really good. And I love what you wrote in your bio, something about, okay, so when you say you want to lift other women up and empower them, you want to teach women how to love themselves. You don't want to give them this fake surfacey empowerment, like, you go girl. You want to teach them how to get that for themselves. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's truly a choice. It's just that most women were not told that they had that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't trained, taught, and educated that way growing up in the, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Right. Right. We were told to do everything for everyone else.
Yep.
And, thinking of your children when you're making dinner, when your kids are little, and, you feed them all and you basically get the leftovers. Like, that's how we were raised. We were raised to give to everybody else and take the leftovers.
Mhm.
You know, no one ever said, your mother didn't tell you that because she didn't know that herself. You know what I mean? It wasn't intentionally pigeonholing women. It's just what happened.
Yeah.
And it's just recognizing that we do have a choice. It's recognizing that regardless of how you grew up, that you have a choice today. You can look back or you can look forward. And it's up to you, whichever way you look. Nobody can make you do that. And it's about saying to you, regardless of what kind of day you're having, it could be the best day ever, it could be the worst day ever. Me being authentic is me saying to you, I don't really care which way, what kind of day you're having. I still love you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still here. I'm still not going anywhere. That's the authenticity that women don't have.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. So moving into 2023, this Rich Bitch Freedom brand that you have, it's a collaboration. Where are you taking it? What's your goal for this year? You're obviously on social media. Where's this going? And then how can women work with you? How can women find you?
Okay, so we are going, I have so many ideas for this because, like I said, because it just feels so visceral to me, like an extension of me. I have all of these ideas flying. Like, I want to have a retreat. I want to have a conference. I want to create a magazine. I want to create a podcast. I want to create a business guide. I have all of these ideas. Where we're starting right now is we had a collaboration call for people to help us. And that's okay. We recorded it. I'll tag you on the recording.
Good.
For people to talk about the Rich Bitch Business Guide is how I labeled it. Now, whether that name stays the same or not, I do not know. But it's about creating something that's completely different than what has been created. It's not about finding collaborators that come in and say, okay, I want to be listed in this business guide. And then me saying, okay, thank you, as I take your money or I take your time or I take your effort. And then you still feel like you're building your business alone. Like, I want it to be a true collaboration. I want it to be where whoever is in, the magazine or on the podcast or in the group or at the conference, for you to not only feel like you're a part of it while you're there, but to feel like you're a part of it even when you're not there. Mm-hmm. And there's so many online magazines now where they do call for collaborations and they do call for contributors all the time. And some of them you even have to pay for to contribute to them. And I've always felt a disconnect because I've always felt like I was a number, or I was just a way to get their brand to be bigger. And that's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do. I want the brands that come together in the Rich Bitch Freedom Collective, I want their individual brands to all elevate because of it. I want to give them the arms to link to so that when someone comes to you and says, hey, Cindy, I want to put my business out there online. I don't really have a website. I don't really do magazines yet. I'm not on a lot of things, but I know that I need to have somebody promoting me because I'm not quite confident to promote myself again yet. How do I do that? And you say, oh, well, go join Traci's group, her Facebook group, Rich Bitch Freedom. And you'll meet a whole bunch of really freaking amazing women in there who are all about collaboration. And then you just tell them about your business and how you help people. And then if they happen to come across to someone who you might be able to help, they just naturally refer you. Yeah. Because that's just how they are. That's just how the people who are drawn to me just naturally are.
And you've been doing that on Facebook ever since I started following you anyway. You're like, where are my female podcasters? Where are my people who do this? So you've already been doing that. It's part of who you are. I'm excited to see where this goes. I think it's super cool. It really, really is. And I can feel it's coming from here. And I know it's going to take off. I think it's amazing. And then the example you're setting for your 4 daughters, I mean, that's priceless. That alone
Right.
makes it totally worth it.
Right.
And you're giving me ideas like, tons of, like I'm firing right now, like, wow. But this is super exciting. I will put your contact info. I mean, anybody can find you on Facebook, right? Or Instagram.
Yes.
But they can do like what I did, send you a message through Messenger.
Yep.
And that's pretty much how I connected with you. So I'll put that here in the notes, but I'm super excited to see where this goes for you and to be a part of it.
Awesome. Because you are one of those women who, I mean, like you, when I think of the brand, there are certain faces that pop up in my brain of women that I've met and I've come across. And yours is definitely one of the top women's faces that I have. Then, you know what I mean? When you think of your ideal client avatar, there's just someone you think of, and you are definitely one of those women, especially with the 50. Like the minute I read that, I was like, that is genius. Like, because so many of us hit that 50 age and we're like, what the 50? Like, how is this possible? Yeah. And what do I do now?
Yeah, we say it in our brains without saying it, but we're usually saying stuff,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Which makes it even funnier because we all know that that's what we're actually saying.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, well, this is fascinating. I feel like we've just uncovered the tip of the iceberg. Like there's so much more that's going to happen. So I'm going to have you back on. And then I can't wait for you to start your own podcast, because I know that's going to be really great.
Yeah, it will. It will. And you will be one of my first guests.
Oh, awesome.
Because reciprocity is very important to me.
Yes. Well, it's all about giving and receiving, like, right. It's a universal law, attraction, reciprocity, karma, call it what you want, but it's all energy exchange.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Traci, thank you so much. Truly, I really appreciate it. This has been amazing.
You're welcome. And I appreciate you asking.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for listening. And please, if you enjoyed the program today, please feel free to share. I appreciate you. Get out there and start living your best damn life. Until next time, take care.